Hello everybody, welcome to the newest episode of The Bearded Gamer Show. As always, I am your host, the Bearded Gamer, Chris Arnone. Straight into good news, bad news. So the first piece of good news is really good news for Bethesda and their parent company, ZeniMax. That is that the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim has shipped, now that's shipped, not sold, so shipped out to retailers, 10 million units. That's just is massive. On the PC side alone, it is outselling all other PC games by a margin of 3 to 1. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It is, absolutely one of the biggest sellers of the year, second only to, of course, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 for the year total. But of course, there is another big PC game coming up right around the corner. Came a little Star Wars themed in the t-shirt today. Star Wars The Old Republic, of course, launching next Tuesday on the 20th. So we'll see if by the actual end of the calendar year, if it's still going to be outselling everything by a margin of 3 to 1. But, great news for Bethesda and ZeniMax. They made a great game, and it's selling really, really well. All right, next piece. This one is some bad news. Now, I keep going back and forth on this, so I'll call it bad news for now until they tell us otherwise. And that is, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I said that the new PlayStation Vita would only be able to handle one PSN account per unit. And then last week, no, they came back and said, no, it's one PSN account per memory card, so you can actually switch. Well, now they come back again saying, no, I'm sorry, we were wrong, the first and the second. Anyway, it's not only tied to the memory card, but also the system itself. So once again, we're back to only one PSN account per PlayStation Vita. This is beginning to feel like, the FDA, where they're like, eggs are good for us. No, eggs are bad for us, until 2 weeks from now. And eggs are good for us again. It's like, seriously, Vita, figure, which one is it? Can we do multiple PSN accounts or can't we? I mean, ultimately, we're just going to have to wait until the console actually comes out in Japan and we hear from those people over there whether it works or not. It's crazy. But for the moment, at least, no, it's one PSN account per PlayStation Vita, so no, doubling up and using your European account, your Japanese account, and your American accounts all on one system. So that sucks. All right, back to some good news. Awfully delayed, but for those of you who were 3DS ambassadors, who, picked it up when it was expensive early on, or cheated and got it from Walmart while it was still too early. But anyway, now the Ambassador Program GBA games are finally available. Now, these were supposed to have been available like back in October, and we just haven't seen them, and they haven't come out. Now, we've had the NES 10-pack for a while, but now the GBA 10-pack is also live and available for download. So if you were one of the early adopters, part of the Ambassador Program, you go into the eShop and you go and you can look at the games, and they'll appear to be already downloaded, and you just choose to re-download them, and that's how you get those 10 free games. So good news, those are finally available. All right, another piece of good news, at least I think this is good news. Now, a while back we heard from CD Projekt, the makers of The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, that particular game, great game, had been pirated something to the tune of 4.5 million times. Now, CD Projekt is very much opposed to using DRM. They don't like to punish honest gamers with DRM. That said, they're also not fans of piracy, obviously. I mean, 4.5 million, if they'd actually sold that many, that's a lot of money. But they are going after a handful of pirates in Germany to the tune of about $1,000 total. Now, it's not a ton, and it's nowhere near the, $50 or $60 times 4.5 million, but it's something. Now, they're saying that they know without any reasonable doubt that these are pirates. Now, they're not saying how they know this, how exactly they figured this out, but that's apparently what they figured out. So they are going after some of those. And I see this as good news because I'm very much against piracy. Well, at least for the most part. I understand, I've talked to some gamers in the Philippines or Brazil where these games are just outrageously expensive. Or in the Philippines, they're $60, but the average monthly family income is something to the tune of like $250. And so it's really hard for people to afford gaming in certain areas. Germany is not one of them. So go CD Projekt, go and get them, as long as you absolutely know they were definitely pirating your game. Stick it to them and get your money. So finish up with a piece of, I'm just going to call this news, because I'm even sort of torn on it. PlayStation Vita games are not going to have printed instruction manuals. Now, we've seen this with some games, but it's still kind of been an off and on, and I'm personally torn on it. You know, I like to go green, I like to not use paper if at all possible, but at the same time, there's a certain convenience to having the instruction manual. You're in the middle of a game and you don't remember how to do something. This especially happens to me if I played something and then months went by and then I come back to it and I'm like, well, I don't remember exactly how this particular move is done. But most of the time with games with a virtual instruction manual, you can't just pause the game and go to the manual. You have to be at like the main menu. So you lose that on-the-fly capability that you get with a printed instruction manual. So depending on who you are, this is going to be good news or bad news. So I can't really qualify it as either one. It's sort of in between for me. But there you go. And no instruction manuals for PlayStation Vita games. All right, guys, on to the Software Soundoff. Now, I'm finally getting the Software Soundoff on schedule and on track. Now, the first few times I did it, it ended up being US numbers because the worldwide numbers weren't coming out when I thought they would. Doing a little later in the week. Probably going to shoot for the Thursday episode, but in this case we're going to do the Saturday episode because there's no review roundup this week. There were just no games reviewed on Gamer Review. We're sort of getting into that lull where everything's been reviewed and not a whole lot's going to come out until next year. But so we're going to do the Software Soundoff. This is the week ending December 10th, and this is global sales numbers. Number 1, Mario Kart 7 sold 1.38 million copies. Now, this is just great to see the 3DS really exploding, having really big sales volume. Finally, of course, it happened to be Mario that would get it done. Number 2, Just Dance 3. This is the Wii version. Sold 968,000 units. Of course, you know, Just Dance has been the biggest third-party seller on the Wii, period, for a long time. Number 3, Super Mario Land 3D, another 3DS title, with 672,000 units. Number 4, of course, it's got to be on the list, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. This is the 360 version, sold 653,000 units. Number 5, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 again, this time the PS3 version, moved 614,000 units. Now, across all 3 major platforms, we're talking, you know, PS3, 360, and PC, Modern Warfare 3, as of the week December 10th, 18.37 million units sold. Just tremendous amount. Number 6, Connected Ventures, sold another 611,000. Of course, those are always shipped with Kinect, so that also tells you how many Kinects were sold that week. Number 7 is straight from Japan, Monster Hunter 3G for the 3DS, sold 526,000 units. Number 8, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim 360 version sold another 511,000 units. Once again, across all 3 of those consoles, PS3, PC, and Xbox 360, 6.83 million units sold as of the week ending December 10th. Just tremendous. Number 9, Mario Kart Wii, 401,000. That puts Mario Kart Wii up to over 30 million sold in its lifetime. It's just crazy. And finally, number 10, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games on the Wii, sold 376,000 units. I tell you what, this is a Mario week. 4 of the top 10 games were all Mario games. Just huge. So yeah, check in next week and we'll catch up on the week ending December 17th global sales. All right, guys, finish up with the burning question. Now, before we get to this week's burning question, of course, I'll address last week's burning question. And the question I posed to people was talking about Miyamoto and his retirement and then not retirement, and really talking about the future of Nintendo without him. So I put the question to everyone. Do you think Nintendo will find that incredible prominence that they once had, that just huge dominating force in the industry they were for a while, under Miyamoto's rule, or will it have to wait until he eventually does retire until someone else takes over? A couple YouTube users chimed in. First one was Yazem Domo. Don't know if that's a correct pronunciation, but he said, if they were to make Mario games for smartphones and tablets, the incentive to buy Nintendo hardware would fade. He then continued a little later, said social and mobile gaming exist in a bubble, and recently I've seen reports from industry gamers saying how the bubble has been bursting for companies like Zynga. So he really didn't agree with some of my sentiments and the stockholder for Nintendo sentiment that Nintendo needs to branch out their software sales, not just focus on their hardware sales. And I personally think it would be great if they went to smartphones and tablets, but he disagrees, and that's okay. Then we have YouTube user Mega Looking at You, who said, yes, Miyamoto will once again show everyone what Nintendo is worth. So, at least on the commenters, people aren't strictly agreeing with me. That's all right. And, ultimately, we'll just have to see. He's not retiring, but he is at least making sure the company is ready for when that time comes. And, the 3DS is doing better. The Wii is definitely in its, twilight hours, and the Wii U's on the horizon. So we'll really have to see, what's going to come ahead. Big games for the 3DS, a really big launch for the Wii U. These are the kinds of things that can definitely put them back on top. All right, so for this week, been a lot of talk about PlayStation Vita this week. Some good news, some bad news, a whole rant I did earlier this week about, the premature death of the Vita, which I think is bunk. But I want to know what you all think. So do you think the PlayStation Vita, where do you think the PlayStation Vita will measure up against other portable consoles? Do you think it'll exceed the PSP, the 3DS? Do you think it could even exceed the juggernaut that had been the Nintendo DS? Just tons and tons of that one sold. Or do you think it will die? Do you think it won't do as well as they hope? Do you think that portable consoles will never ever see the heyday they once saw? Let me know what you think, and then next week when I do the burning question, I'll read off the best answers right here on the show. All right, guys, have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.